Okay, so now we can go back to the share screen. Anyway, some people had some issues. Let me know. You can chime in or email me. I want you to be able to get it. But this is an important part of communicating, is getting something that comes out scientifically and communicate it to a non-scientific or general audience. And yes, that is fraught. Anyway, next week, and I moved it to Friday because of my illness, is I have a press release. Information that you would send out to a media outlet to let them know what we're doing, that it's a good program, kids helping low-income people identify lead in their water. And so here's basic information. And I'll tell you a secret, they use this to actually write a story. So there is a news story based on this press release floating around up there. The difference is I want the press release that started the story. So that's kind of next week. Do something that's going to be in, that's going to get their attention and will get you some coverage. Because in public relations, the whole point is to work with the media and have them do the work. Okay, so here's the information. And I have some examples from a book, yes, that I helped write. Here are why there's a news release and what it should look like. Let it know, contact information, where it comes from. So yeah, basic stuff. This is what a press release looks like. You have plenty of information to write one and send it to a media outlet so they would do a story. That's what press releases are for. So not hard. And here's an example. Like I said, I helped write the book this came from. And some do's and don'ts. Some good guidelines, because the point is, all the stuff we always say, keep it short to the point so people will want to look at it. Anyway, so that's next week's. You have a week and a half because it's going to take me a little time to catch up. And you had some issues with the first news release, or some did, and I really want you to be able to get it. So that's what we do next week. And to put such things into context, and I'll always have notes from the class posted so you know what's going on. Last week's assignment didn't have everybody in. Some struggled, some were great. I'll give you an extension till the end of the week to get it in before I really look at it. Okay, news versus opinion versus public relation. News should be neutral and unbiased, or at least balanced and based on fact. Big thing in news, you're answerable to the audience. You're giving the audience what they need to know about climate change or a hurricane or something like that. You're not answerable to your boss. You're answerable to the public. You're supervised by an editor or producer, and the audience knows it's a news story. Like it or not, you know what it is. Advertising has a point of view. You want someone to buy something or to attend an event. It may or may not be fact-based. It's always biased because you're trying to get somebody to buy something, to do something. But that's not bad. May not be accurate, but it cannot be fraudulent. There is no law that says everything you have to read in the media is true. The laws do say that you can't defraud somebody with your lies. So you might, there's a right to be wrong. There's a right to have an opinion, but there's not a right to rip people off with your opinions. Advertising, you're not answerable to the audience. You're answerable to the sponsor, the person who says, we want to sell more Coca-Cola. So forms of advertising, commercials, various ads, pop-up billboards, swag, all sorts of stuff. Opinion is usually identified as opinion in news. You know it. Opinion on top. Maybe not in public relations, though. Opinions should be based on fact, maybe in news or PR, and it may be answerable to either. You might be writing an opinion piece to get them to vote a certain way, but but sometimes you're writing an opinion for a newspaper or a TV station, and you're just saying something because you have something important to say. Okay. Okay, advertising, public relations, I kind of skipped over. Public relations has a point of view. You always expect PR to be biased. It should be accurate, true, and fact-based. This is just it. PR people should not lie. You use the facts for your organization. You are supervised by the client or the sponsor or the boss. You're not working for the audience interest, you're working for the boss. The audience may not know it's PR. The audience knows what's news, they know what's a commercial, but they don't know what public relations is.
A lot has happened since my big back Greek wedding. My father's last wish was for us to reconnect with
what people think public relations is and what public relations actually is. So, and this is a very common misnomer that public relations is all about media relations. I think about it as just publicists and things, but the reality is that public speaking involves a lot of different things. There's a lot of different areas that you can get into in public relations, and some people work in all of them. Some people specialize in others. So before we get into anything else with public relations, though, let's talk about what we mean by public relations. What is public relations, and make sure we're all on the same page there. So our definition of public relations is going to be that public relations is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics.
That's a good one.
So a couple of key things here. Public relations is strategic. It is a process. And it builds mutually beneficial relationships, meaning it's not all one-sided. This is a two-way process between an organization and their public. So key in on those things as we talk about the rest of what public relations is and as we continue through this whole series. Some key characteristics of public relations to be aware of, things that we need to know that are true about public relations. First of all, it's deliberate. Public relations is not an accident. Again, public relations is strategic, meaning it's thought out. There's a process there, and it is very deliberate. It's something that is indeed planned, right? It's intentional, which means that we have at least a plan in place. Now, that plan doesn't always go through 100% and doesn't turn out exactly how we thought it would or go exactly the way we thought it would, but there is, at least at the outset, there is some deliberation, some thought about what we want to accomplish, and there's a plan for how we're going to achieve that. Public relations is also about performance. It's about doing the thing, and it's about achieving those results. It's measured in certain ways, and it is able to be quantified. The success of public relations is able to be quantified.
In other words, did we sell more soda bottles? Did more people vote for Trump or Biden, depending on who you're working for?
Think public relations is and what public relations actually is. So, and this is a very common misnomer that public relations is all about media relations. I think about it as just publicists and things, but the reality is that public speaking involves a lot of different things. There's a lot of different areas that you can get into in public relations, and some people work in all of them. Some people specialize in others. So Before we get into anything else with public relations, though, let's talk about what we mean by public relations. What is public relations, and make sure we're all on the same page there. So our definition of public relations is going to be that public relations is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. So a couple of key things here. Public relations is strategic. It is a process, and it builds mutually beneficial.
One of the things PR people hate is saying, oh, let's get the word out. Get the word out to who? Why? What is the return? That is not being professional. That's being unprofessional.
Relationships, meaning it's not all one-sided. This is a two-way process between an organization and their public. So
Sorry.
key in on those things as we talk about the rest of what public relations is, and as we continue through this whole series. Some key characteristics of public relations to be aware of, things that we need to know that are true about public relations. First of all, it's deliberate. Public relations is not an accident. Again, public relations is strategic, meaning it's thought out. There's a process there, and it is very deliberate. It's something that is indeed planned, right? It's intentional, which means that we have at least a plan in place. Now, that plan doesn't always go through 100% and doesn't, turn out exactly how we thought it would or go exactly the way we thought it would, but there is, at least at the outset, there is some deliberation, some thought about what we want to accomplish. And there's a plan for how we're going to achieve that. Public relations is also about performance. It's about doing the thing, and it's about achieving those results. It's measured in certain ways, and it.
Okay. Given the homework, what is the point, the strategic goal of putting a press release about working with people in the community with polluted backyards? What's the point of this communication? Well, to let people know you're here, to build good relationships with the community, raise the profile of the university, let them know that we care about our community, and maybe get some money out of it. Those are all the things involved when you're doing something like this. Where to go? Here it is.
It is, able to be quantified. The success of public relations is able to be quantified if you're talking about a public relations campaign. So it's important that we keep in mind that performance is how we measure public relations, whether or not we're achieving those goals and then going out and doing those things. Public relations also involves public interest. It involves, first of all, watching out for the public interest, having the public in mind. Again, this is a mutually beneficial relationship between the organization and its public. So we ought to keep in mind the public interest. In other words, what is good for me is good for you, so to speak, right? When a rising tide lifts all ships, as the old saying goes. So we want to be conscientious of the fact that when we serve the public, we're also serving our organization. It should be that kind of relationship as we think about it in a public relations sense. I've mentioned a couple of times now that public relations involves two-way communication. Advertising and marketing really focus on one-way communication. They're interested in getting the message out and just having it heard and responded to. But public relations is a two-way street. It really does involve listening to that public and adjusting then and making that a part of that deliberation and that plan and the performance of that thing, measuring it in terms of as much as anything else. How does this affect the public, and is this mutually beneficial? So it's very much a two-way process, a two-way sense of communication there. And finally, it is a management function. That's how we want to think of public relations. It's really a management function. It should be something that is involved in the highest management levels of an organization. It should be involved in strategically involved in all the areas in which that organization works. So in all the different functional areas, public relations has to have at least an idea.
And the problem is a lot of management people don't know this stuff, and they want you to say what they want to say, even if it's ineffective. So that's one of the dynamic tensions you face as a public relations practitioner. Okay. Okay, forms of public relations press releases to get something in the press. Video subsidies. When you see in science a conveyor belt of all the new vaccines, it comes from the pharmaceutical company. They're giving you stuff so you don't have to send out a reporter. Swag, hats and t-shirts, news events. You stage an event to introduce your product or your service. Press conferences. Press conferences are always fake. You put on a press conference to get attention. So we'll show you, okay? And you find it both. Here's today's CNN. What's live and what isn't. Okay, lead news. Nope, that's news. Testimony from Trump's chief of staff could be from a lawyer on that side. Graduate student charged in murder. That came from the University of North Carolina. It happened yesterday. They needed to get on top of that in order to let stuff happen. Steve Harvey, yes, he sent that out, obviously. So yeah, a lot of the things you see in the news comes from PR sources. Ooh, that's just gross, but that came from the hospital. The CNN isn't sitting there waiting for this worm to come out. The hospital called them up and said, wow, this is cool. In a similar vein, yes. Yes, the biggest alligator ever to come out of the state of Mississippi was caught this weekend. Come on, give me a picture. Anyway, I hate when that happens, but yeah, 14-foot alligator came out of the ground. There it is. Yep, there it is. It's a big friggin' alligator. That came from the Mississippi Department of Wildlife Management. That's why I'm showing it to you. They're the ones who wanted to get the public relations. My point is, so much of your news comes from public relations sources. Oh, here's a fun one. Here is PR from
To provide the energy solutions that advance modern life. ExxonMobil.
My name is Prasanna Joshi. I'm the Vice President for the Low Carbon Solutions Technology portfolio.
See, look at Exxon. They're taking
the total emissions on anthropogenic level are about 30.
On the other hand, news. Come on. Where did the sound go? Oh, there it is.
Happen, but that they've known since the 1970s. And yet they still spent millions to convince Americans that global warming was not a real thing. Our findings demonstrate that ExxonMobil didn't just know something about global warming decades ago, they knew as much as academic and government scientists knew, the report reads.
See,
But
news says they're bad and they hit it. Their PR department says, oh, look at us, we're fixing it, aren't we wonderful? That's the difference. Here's another fun one. Since we've talked about local news.
as the weather warms up and school lets out for summer break, many of us go to East Tennessee lakes and rivers to fish and to cool off. But before you jump in, you may want to think twice. Do you know what's in the water? One clean water advocate says even the state doesn't check often enough.
We're going to learn more now. 10 News reporter Cole Sullivan joins us live along the water in downtown. And Cole, you looked into toxins that should raise concerns and what people can do about it.
Robert and John, that's right. We've gone through hundreds of pages from the states and found creeks, rivers, and lakes in our area that have E. coli, mercury, and other pollutants that could be harmful to our families. They're the jewels of East Tennessee, a place for us to cool off, play, and fish under the hot sun. But what's really in the water?
Pollution happens every day, all day long.
And some of that pollution could hurt you.
You could have some gastrointestinal effects, such as diarrhea.
Our story starts here at Beaver Creek in Carnes with Natalie Landry and her team from Knox County Stormwater Management.
And we're going to take a sample that will later be analyzed for bacteria.
They're testing for bacteria in the water before it makes its way downstream.
Beaver Creek's headwaters start way up in Gibbs, make its way through Halls, down through Powell, and into Carnes, and then finally flow down into Melton Hill Lake.
Beaver Creek is one of just hundreds of small streams feeding the lakes and rivers where we play. And as they wind their way through our communities, they bring pollutants along.
That's a major volume of water that's washing through there, and it's picking up everything along the way.
So what is in that water?
We probably have thousands, tens of thousands of chemicals in water.
State documents show pollutants and bacteria, such as E. coli, mercury, and PCBs in Beaver Creek, First, Second, and Third Creek in Knoxville, Fort Loudon Lake, Melton Hill, the list goes on. But the good news, experts say just swimming in the water likely won't get you sick.
We would have to swallow a lot of water many times before health effect would
Some
become apparent.
balance, but
Dr. Frank
okay.
Loeffler is a
On the other
microbiologist at
hand-
UT. He says it's
Let's see what the TVA, who oversees these lakes, what they have to say. And here's what independent news says: there's stuff in there. The TVA, which oversees the lake, looks at it another way. We know we take care of all the water quality. We monitor the water. We manage the water supply. We take care, and it's all safe, really, really, really. You know, so they don't tell you about all the chemicals. They say, well, look at all the good stuff we're doing. And they are. But you see the difference between news and PR. So next week, again, PR for the school. There's an article out there. If you want to look it up, you can. And you can write a press release, and I have examples, you can look them up, and I'll get to this week's assignment and do the grading when I feel a little better. Anyway, questions? You guys can speak up, you know. But I do appreciate you showing up, and I'm here for you.